Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about a perennial that I've been growing for the last few years, and I'm talking about a bush cherry. So the cherry is conventionally a tree, but this specific variety has been bred or grafted to be a bush variety. And so the benefits of a bush variety is that they naturally grow smaller, that you don't have to regularly prune them as intensively as you might have to with a tree, and they can be a lot easier to use for like a home backyard gardener. They take up less space and they can be a little bit easier to manage in that kind of context. So this particular bush cherry that I have, I don't know the exact variety, but it's been bearing fruit pretty reliably for the last few years, and I thought I'd do a video about that because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to propagate more of them. And so in order to effectively do that, I had to collect the seeds, which I did, and I planted them back in the fall. And if those seeds were to sprout, then I would most likely have to graft the branches from the bush cherries that I already have onto those seedlings after their first year of growth, so that would be next year, in order to best preserve those genetic characteristics. Now I may let a few seeds go and not graft them and just kind of see what they do. All the same, just for the sake of learning, see if they bear fruit, if they turn into a tree, or if they remain a bush size. You know, you're just kind of rolling the genetic dice. But it is also always good to have genetic diversity whenever you have a species of plant in the garden that would make the overall population more resistant to disease and pests. Because different plants might have different genetic characteristics that would make them resistant in different ways to some of these challenges. So like I said, I planted these seeds back in the fall. It is now early spring, so let's go take a look and see what we have going on. Alright, so here is one of the bush cherries I have. As you can see, I have the bottom of it kind of roped up a little bit just to keep it up off the ground, especially when these trees begin to bear fruit and, well, the fruit begins to ripen really, and it begins to go into that fruit fill stage. The branches can get pretty heavy and they can begin to droop. So to help keep the stems from snapping, or the branches from snapping, or getting low-hanging fruit, so to speak, that a lot of voles and other animals can go after pretty easily, and also for good ventilation and aeration, I keep it roped up like that. You don't necessarily have to keep it roped up like that all year. In fact, it's probably better that you don't, because you don't want to get like a rope burn or any injury like that on the branches or the stems, especially in like the spring or the fall when the wind can pick up and it can create a little bit more friction in those areas. So yeah, this is one of them. They just finished flowering a couple of weeks ago. They're beginning to bear fruit. So the fruit's really small. It's beginning to it's green and it's beginning to kind of grow in size a little bit, but you can see them here. So they can bear fruit pretty heavily. And in this carpet of grass and ground ivy, we have the other cherry tree, which is right next, relatively close to the other one. There's a devil's walking stick tree in between them. But yeah, so this is the other bush. Now this bush cherry had a little bit of trouble bearing fruit last year, but it seems to be bearing much more heavily this year. I know I had moved them a few years back, like transplanted them, and they took a little bit of you know, and they survived it pretty well, but they still took a little bit of time to really reestablish themselves, but they seem to be doing quite well at this point in time. Alright, so earlier this year, actually back in the fall, I had planted some cherry pits, and these are from the bush cherry trees, or bushes I guess really, and I wanted to try to propagate them. So I collected the pits after harvesting fruit, and collected a bunch of the pits, let them dry out, and then I waited over the summer until I planted them back later on in the fall. So I wanted to do this in order to propagate more of these bush cherry plants, because I only have 2 of them. So if I can get more by way of planting these seeds and then grafting some of the branches of the old bush cherries on these seeds in order to preserve those genetics, then I might be able to do that. So I was thinking of doing that. I was also thinking of just letting a few of the cherry pits grow into trees and let them, and just kind of see what they would produce otherwise. But anyway, we'll see how this whole thing goes. So anyway, I planted these pits in the fall, and I did that because cherry seeds are surrounded by a hard, tough outer shell, and that is basically so that these plants can survive the winter and that shell can break down over the colder months, let it kind of biodegrade, soak up the moisture, and then with that intermittent freeze and thaw period during the early spring, that shell can really break down, and the seeds can emerge later on. So what I did was I just pulled up some grass in this row, kind of weeded out the area beforehand, and then I sowed in the cherry pits. I also planted some peas in here as well. This is the Laxton pea variety, just to kind of help add some nitrogen, kind of have some companion planting going on there. And I still have some weeding to do this spring as well, but the cherry saplings are beginning to emerge. And you can see one of them here. I believe that's one. So you can see one of them here, this one, and then there's one right over here. And there are about probably 30, 40, or 50 of them coming up in this entire patch. So hopefully that'll give some ample opportunity for grafting. Hopefully a bunch of them will be successful in that. And then of course what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to wait at least a year and then graft next spring, I believe, because you don't want to wait any longer, because then they begin to branch out, and then you don't want to do it too soon because this is their first year of growth and it's all like soft plant tissue. So being able to graft them right at the right time is key. I probably planted close to 75 or 100 cherry pits because I didn't know what the germination rate would be like, and it looks like so far, given what's emerged so far, you know, I'm probably getting a half to 2/3 of emergence of what I had planted. Probably try to do an update video maybe next fall when I'm grafting them to kind of document that process and kind of share my experience with how I'm going about doing that and such like that. So alright. And so now what I'm going to do is over these next few days, maybe next couple of weeks, is I'm going to add in a little bit of compost. Well, first I'm going to weed out some of the grasses and all that, and then I'm going to add in some compost and maybe a little bit of mulch, maybe some grass mulch, and then keep it watered so that these seedlings can grow nice and strong, and they can be a good specimens to graft onto next year. Alright. Thanks so much for checking out this video. Look forward to seeing you in a future video. Take care.